The Sherman family silence operation. On a cold December morning in 2017, something deeply unsettling was discovered inside one of Toronto's wealthiest neighborhoods. Barry and Honey Sherman, the billionaire couple behind the generic drug empire Apotex, were found lifeless beside their indoor pool, posed in a chilling, almost ritualistic display. Belts looped over a metal railing. Bodies arranged with eerie precision. Police rushed to label it a murder-suicide, but the scene whispered a completely different truth. For years, Barry Sherman had been a thorn in the side of Big Pharma. He built Apotex by slashing prices, offering generics at a fraction of the cost, sometimes 80 to 90% cheaper. To ordinary people, he was a hero. To drug giants, he was a saboteur. And for over a decade, he'd been receiving threats from those who claimed he was destroying the industry. But the pressure had reached a new level just weeks before his death. Sherman had quietly handed Canadian regulators evidence of a sweeping price-fixing scheme, claiming major pharmaceutical companies were coordinating to inflate drug costs and bury generic competition. He was preparing to testify, on record, in front of a parliamentary committee. Billions of dollars, corporate reputations, and entire profit structures were on the line. And then he was silenced. The details inside the mansion didn't match the official story. Both Barry and Honey were found with their wrists bound behind them, a position no forensic expert could reconcile with suicide. There were no notes, no last messages, no signs of personal despair. Instead, private investigators later revealed something far darker: injuries consistent with restraint and torture. Autopsy details, sealed for months, showed compression marks that didn't align with hanging, defensive wounds that police somehow missed, and most unsettling of all, no signs of a struggle inside the house, suggesting the killers were let in or already knew the Shermans well. The timing was almost too perfect. Within 48 hours, Barry Sherman was set to deliver testimony that, according to recovered documents on his computer, implicated executives from multiple pharmaceutical giants, names powerful enough to shake the global industry. But the investigation took a strange turn. Homicide detectives were suddenly pulled off the case. Evidence vanished from police storage. Surveillance footage seized from neighboring homes never resurfaced. Witnesses reported being discouraged from speaking publicly. Analysts later estimated that Sherman's testimony could have triggered over $50 billion in fines and criminal penalties. Instead, the only person who could confirm the conspiracy was dead, and the secrets he was about to expose died with him. But was this a coincidence or a message? The secret blackmail shut down. On August 10, 2019, the world woke up to a headline that didn't make sense. Jeffrey Epstein, the billionaire financier at the center of one of the darkest criminal scandals in modern history, was found dead inside his Manhattan jail cell. Officials called it a suicide. But the timing, the failures, the sheer number of coincidences, they told a very different story. For decades, Epstein had moved inside the highest circles of global power. Presidents, royals, CEOs, Hollywood figures. His private contact lists read like a blueprint of influence. And behind the scenes, investigators claimed he was running a massive blackmail pipeline, quietly collecting compromising recordings of some of the world's most recognizable names. His private island, whispered about by locals with a mix of fear and disgust, was rumored to be outfitted with hidden cameras in nearly every room. His estates in New York and Florida reportedly held safes packed with hard drives, photos, and documents. Enough material, some prosecutors suggested, to destabilize entire governments if ever made public. And then, just weeks before his death, everything shifted. Epstein had begun talking. His legal team said he was unexpectedly optimistic, even confident. According to court filings and interviews at the time, he was negotiating for protective custody in exchange for cooperation. Cooperation that could have implicated powerful individuals across politics, business, and entertainment. That was the moment the situation suddenly collapsed. On the night Epstein died, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a facility known for tight security, experienced an almost impossible series of breakdowns. Cameras in the hallway failed. Guards who were supposed to be monitoring him reportedly fell asleep at the same time. His cellmate was moved out hours earlier. And despite recent concerns about his safety, Epstein's suicide watch had been lifted. It was as if the perfect storm had been engineered. The autopsy only fueled the fire. The medical examiner ruled suicide, but an independent forensic expert who examined the same evidence said the injuries were more typical of manual strangulation. Multiple fractures in the neck, ligature marks that didn't match standard hanging patterns, signs that suggested force, not self-harm. And then the most suspicious thing of all happened. Within hours of Epstein's death, federal agents stormed his island and his Manhattan mansion, removing computers, photographs, documents, entire rooms of potential evidence. What was on those drives has never been publicly revealed. Freedom of Information Act requests were rejected. Files were sealed. Some documents were classified under national security protections. Just like that, the man at the center of a sprawling criminal network was gone, and the investigation that threatened to expose some of the world's most powerful people evaporated with him. Whether you believe the official story or the countless alternative theories, one thing is undeniable. Epstein's death protected individuals whose exposure could have shifted global politics, altered corporate empires, and blown open alliances that stretch across countries and industries. The question isn't just how Epstein died. It's who stood to lose everything if he kept talking. The McAfee extradition enigma. John McAfee, the wild-eyed tech pioneer who built the world's first major antivirus empire, was found dead inside a Spanish prison cell on June 23, 2021. Hours earlier, a court had finalized his extradition to the United States. The timing alone was enough to spark suspicion. But what McAfee claimed he was about to release turned the mystery into a storm. For months, McAfee had been teasing a dead man's switch, a massive, automated data dump he said would expose hidden surveillance networks, secret financial manipulation, and government-linked cyber operations. He warned, openly and repeatedly, that if anything happened to him, the files would activate on their own. And then, suddenly, he was gone. McAfee had long believed he was being watched. After leaving his antivirus company, he claimed he'd discovered that intelligence agencies were using commercial software, including security products, as covert gateways into millions of personal devices. He accused the CIA, NSA, and unnamed corporate partners of building a silent monitoring grid far beyond what anyone imagined. Whether people believed him or not, McAfee kept digging. In the months leading up to his death, he was developing a blockchain-based communication platform designed to be completely untraceable, a system he said would bypass every major surveillance method governments rely on. Anonymous transactions, invisible messaging, zero centralized control. If it worked, it could have destabilized entire financial monitoring systems. But McAfee's investigations didn't stop there. He also claimed to have uncovered evidence of large-scale cryptocurrency manipulation, alleging that central banks and government agencies were quietly suppressing digital currencies in public while secretly stockpiling them for future leverage. His so-called insurance files, according to his own statements, held years of this research, which made what happened next even stranger. Prison officials said McAfee was found hanging from torn bedsheets, but inmates reported hearing a struggle, multiple voices, coming from his cell block hours earlier. Security cameras in the corridor? Corrupted. Unrecoverable, according to the official report. And then came the most chilling detail of all. Within minutes of the news breaking, before his lawyers even confirmed the death, McAfee's servers went dark. Every node connected to his alleged dead man's switch shut down at the exact same moment, as if someone knew precisely what to disable and when. No files were released. No data surfaced. The switch stayed silent. Spanish authorities cremated McAfee's body in less than 48 hours, long before his family could arrive to request an independent autopsy. With that, any chance of a second opinion gone forever. What made it even more unsettling were McAfee's own warnings. For years, he insisted publicly that he would never take his own life. If he died suddenly, he said, it meant someone else wanted him silenced. His final social media messages included cryptic references to insurance, to enemies closing in, and to a truth he claimed the world wasn't ready to see. McAfee once said, "If I disappear, I didn't disappear. Someone made me disappear." With his servers wiped, his files sealed, and the man himself gone, the only question left is, what did he know that was too dangerous to let out? Vaccine truth silenced. Dr. Brandy Vaughn had once worked deep inside the pharmaceutical world. She knew its language, its systems, its secrets. And on December 8, 2020, she was found dead inside her California home, just weeks before she was reportedly set to testify in a major lawsuit involving her former employer. Officials called her death natural. Her supporters called it something else entirely. Vaughn had spent years speaking out about what she described as flaws in pharmaceutical safety practices. As a former employee of Merck, she claimed she had seen internal documents that didn't match public messaging about certain products. After leaving the industry, she launched Learn the Risk, a platform dedicated to challenging how pharmaceutical companies present safety data to regulators and the public. Her voice grew rapidly. Hundreds of thousands followed her online. Her presentations, sharp, polished, and insider level, accused companies of relying on biased trials, ghost-written research, and regulatory loopholes to push products forward. She frequently questioned the accuracy of official reporting systems, including the CDC's VIRS database, arguing that only a fraction of adverse events ever made it inside. These were controversial claims, and they made her a polarizing figure. But it was what happened in the months before her death that caused the most alarm. Vaughn documented a series of unsettling incidents. Her home broken into with nothing taken, items moved to different places, unmarked cars idling near her street, anonymous threats flooding her inbox. She shared videos saying she feared she was being watched, not because she was paranoid, she insisted, but because she had evidence. Most chilling were the warnings she repeated publicly. She said she was healthy. She said she would never harm herself. And if she died suddenly, she said, investigate it. Then came the day everything stopped. The coroner listed a sudden cardiac event as the cause, a rare condition, especially for a 47-year-old woman with no known heart issues. Her family asked for an independent autopsy, but were turned down. Toxicology reports came back, inconclusive, leaving more questions than answers. And then something strange happened. Within days, Learn the Risk went dark. Her website disappeared. Her social media accounts vanished. Research files she had spent years compiling were suddenly gone from servers across multiple platforms. It looked, at least to her supporters, like her work had been erased in one coordinated sweep. Dr. Brandy Vaughn had warned that if she died under suspicious circumstances, her disappearance would speak louder than her words. Now her research, her digital footprint, and even her online communities had vanished almost as quickly as she did. Which leaves one haunting question hanging in the air. Was she silenced, or simply unheard? Financial whistleblower dead. John Wheeler III was a man who lived between worlds: military, intelligence, finance. A former Pentagon advisor, a high-level consultant, and a security-cleared insider with decades of access to the machinery of American power. On the last day of 2010, he was found dead in a Delaware landfill. Officials offered no clear explanation, but those who knew what he'd been working on believed the timing was no accident. Wheeler had recently stumbled onto something dark buried inside Pentagon contracting procedures, irregularities that didn't look like mistakes, but patterns. When he followed the money, the trail pointed to a network involving defense contractors, offshore accounts, and, according to his private notes, major financial institutions. His background made him uniquely qualified to understand what he'd uncovered. Wheeler had served as a special assistant to the Secretary of the Air Force. He'd advised defense giants, worked alongside top military strategists, and earned the kind of clearances that open doors most people never even know exist. And that access revealed something alarming. Wheeler reportedly discovered that certain contractors were grossly overbilling the government, then funneling excess funds through shell companies overseas. Billions of taxpayer dollars, he believed, were being moved into offshore financial havens and used to support covert operations and unreported weapons deals. More explosive were Wheeler's allegations that major U.S. banks were involved, not accidentally, but actively. According to documents he had collected, institutions like J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo were allegedly approving questionable transfers, generating misleading paperwork, and failing to report suspicious transactions. Wheeler compiled everything: contracts, emails, financial trails, internal communications. Enough, he thought, to force congressional investigators to take action. And then, everything unraveled. In the days before his death, Wheeler told friends he felt he was being followed, that his phone calls were being monitored, that something was closing in on him. Family members said his sudden paranoia was completely unlike him. Surveillance footage later showed him wandering through downtown Wilmington, disoriented, clutching one shoe, moving as if escaping from someone or something. Hours later, his body appeared in a landfill, but no evidence ever showed how he got there, who put him there, or what happened between his last sighting and his death. The autopsy revealed injuries consistent with physical assault, yet investigators publicly insisted there was no evidence of foul play. And then came the final, quiet erasures. The Congressional Review Wheeler was preparing materials for was quietly shut down. The prosecutors he'd been communicating with were reassigned. Federal agents seized his research files and sealed them under national security restrictions that still haven't been lifted. John Wheeler's final days remain a gap in the record. His discoveries, locked away. His investigation, buried. His death, unexplained. Which raises the question, what did Wheeler find that someone needed to make disappear? The tech conspiracy. Aaron Swartz was just 26, a programming prodigy and fearless internet activist, when he was found dead in his Brooklyn apartment on a cold January morning in 2013. He had been on the verge of exposing a secret world few understood, a digital surveillance network linking the government with some of the biggest tech companies on the planet. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, all quietly giving intelligence agencies unprecedented access to private data. Emails, chats, financial transactions, nothing was off limits. Swartz wasn't just uncovering ordinary secrets. He had traced the very foundations of what would later shock the world through Edward Snowden's leaks. Using his fellowship at Harvard's Ethics Center, he mapped out partnerships between tech giants and spy agencies, revealing a system designed to watch every click, every search, every move online. Even more alarming, Swartz discovered that these companies weren't passive participants. Their platforms were deliberately structured to hand over data, to make surveillance easier, faster, and invisible. It was a betrayal of privacy on an unprecedented scale. He had planned a massive release of millions of documents, academic papers, and even classified materials, proof of how technology was quietly being turned into a tool against freedom. But the government moved against him. Federal prosecutors hit him with multiple felony charges, threatening decades in prison. Many colleagues suspected the legal attack wasn't about justice. It was a warning to stop his revelations. And then, just weeks before he could reveal the full story at a major tech conference, Swartz was gone. His presentation materials were seized by federal agents and never returned. Friends say he had no intention of harming himself, that he was determined to fight. Yet his death silenced a voice that could have changed the internet forever. Was it a tragic personal loss, or a convenient end to a threat that powerful forces couldn't afford to face? Power grid conspiracy. By the summer of 1994, he was working on something that could have rewritten the rules of energy itself. Kildall developed software that could coordinate renewable energy, power from homes, businesses, and local grids, allowing communities to trade energy directly and break free from monopolies. Centralized power companies, long accustomed to controlling supply and inflating prices, suddenly faced an existential threat. This wasn't just innovation, it was a revolution. His technology promised cheaper, cleaner, and independent energy for millions, potentially making traditional power plants obsolete within a decade. He refused offers from major energy corporations, determined to release his software as open source for everyone. Then, on July 11, 1994, Kildall was found dead, officially from head injuries after a fall at a California bar. But witnesses reported seeing men in suits shadowing him that night, vanishing immediately after the incident. The medical report raised questions too. Multiple impacts suggested something far more sinister than a simple accident. Within days, his lab was raided. Every computer containing his groundbreaking software disappeared. The break-in had the precision of professionals, not thieves, a calculated strike to erase a threat to powerful energy interests. Had the man who aimed to free the world from energy monopolies simply fallen, or had he been silenced before his ideas could ignite a revolution? The media whistleblower. Michael Hastings was fearless in his pursuit of the truth, a journalist determined to expose the hidden strings controlling the news. On June 18, 2013, just hours after warning colleagues he was about to publish explosive evidence, his life came to a sudden and fiery end. Hastings had been investigating how intelligence agencies quietly manipulate public opinion. Operation Mockingbird, once a Cold War-era CIA tactic, had evolved. In the digital age, governments could steer social media trends, shape online debates, and even manufacture grassroots movements with AI-driven bots. He uncovered that major news outlets weren't just reporting. They were receiving direct guidance on what stories to highlight, how to frame issues, and which investigations to bury. Democracy, it seemed, was being subtly rewritten behind the headlines. On the night of his death, Hastings warned friends he was being watched. Emails hinted at threats and investigations, and he expressed fear for his life. Then his car crashed at high speed into a tree, igniting a blaze so intense that it took firefighters over an hour to put out. Witnesses claimed the vehicle seemed to accelerate on its own. Experts note that modern cars can be remotely accessed and controlled, making suspicions all the more chilling. The article Hastings had been preparing was never published. His files were seized, disappearing into government hands. Rolling Stone confirmed the story would have exposed systematic manipulation of news media far beyond anything previously known. Had a journalist simply lost control of his car, or had forces aligned against truth ensured his silence in the most dramatic way possible? The nuclear whistleblower. Karen Silkwood was an ordinary chemical technician, but what she uncovered at the Kerr-McGee plutonium plant in Oklahoma made her extraordinary and dangerous. By 1974, she had collected damning evidence that the company was putting profits above human lives, exposing workers and nearby communities to deadly radiation. Her meticulous documentation revealed safety corners cut, radioactive waste dumped illegally, and falsified inspection reports. Even more shocking, regulators in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission were aware, but chose to protect corporate profits rather than public health. Thousands were at risk of cancer and radiation-related illnesses, and Silkwood had the proof. On November 13, 1974, she was driving to meet a reporter, carrying documents that could have exposed the collusion between government and industry. Then her car collided with a concrete culvert, but something about the crash didn't add up. Scratches suggested another vehicle forced her off the road. Tire marks hinted at a second car's presence. And the papers she had carried? Gone. Vanished without a trace. Her death silenced a whistleblower whose evidence could have sent executives and officials to prison. Was it a tragic accident or a deliberate act to protect the nuclear energy empire from exposure? The silent researcher. Dr. Jeff Bradstreet was a controversial but determined figure, an autism researcher who believed he had uncovered something big, something powerful enough to draw the attention of federal agents. On June 19, 2015, he was found dead in a river in North Carolina, a gunshot wound in his chest, just days after his clinic had been raided. Bradstreet had spent years treating children with autism, developing detoxification therapies he claimed could dramatically reduce symptoms. Thousands of families credited him with improvements traditional medicine couldn't explain. His theories challenged the dominant narrative that autism was purely genetic and untreatable. He argued that certain vaccine ingredients could harm vulnerable children, pointing to metals like mercury, and aluminum as possible culprits. His research was controversial, widely debated, and heavily criticized, but it drew enormous attention, especially when he began studying nagalase, an enzyme he believed played a role in immune suppression. Supporters claim he suspected it was linked to broader health issues, and that someone didn't want those questions asked. Days before his death, federal agents raided his clinic. They seized his files, his patient records, and the protocols he had spent years developing. Officials said it was about unapproved treatments. But Bradstreet's family insisted he had been optimistic, ready to defend his work, not end his life. Private investigators hired by the family raised disturbing questions. The wound was on the left side of his chest, though Bradstreet was right-handed. The angle seemed off. And the weapon? Never found, despite extensive searches of the area. Then came the pattern. Within months, several other alternative medicine doctors researching similar topics were also found dead under unclear circumstances. To some, the timing looked less like coincidence and more like a message. And when you step back, the pattern across all 10 cases becomes hard to ignore. Again and again, individuals who threatened billion-dollar systems, pharmaceutical giants, intelligence agencies, energy cartels, media empires, met sudden, suspicious ends. Official reports called them accidents, suicides, tragedies. But in every case, the information they carried vanished with them. Documents disappeared. Hard drives wiped. Research seized. Leads closed. Each death created a silence that protected powerful interests and buried truths we may never recover. If there is a system at work, it operates in the shadows, disguising eliminations as accidents, silencing threats before their voices reach the world. And for every billionaire or high-profile figure who raises questions in public, how many vanish with no spotlight at all? In a world where information is the most valuable currency, the people who hold the most dangerous secrets walk the thinnest line. And those who challenge the architecture of power often discover just how far that power will go to protect itself. The deeper you look, the clearer the pattern becomes. And the more unsettling the final question grows. How many truths have been buried with the people brave enough to uncover them? If you want more deep-dive investigations into mysterious deaths, buried secrets, and hidden power structures, make sure you subscribe to Strange Wise, hit the like button, and drop a comment telling me which case shocked you the most. Your support helps keep these stories alive.